The massive space station orbited the dead world of Keth 7, its metallic hull gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside its corridors, the greatest hunters from across the galaxy had gathered for the annual Apex convention. This was where the most feared predators came to trade stories, compare kills, and display their most prized trophies. Commander Sarah Chen walked through the main hall, her standard-issue boots making soft clicks against the polished floor. She was the only human present, and she could feel hundreds of alien eyes tracking her movement. The invitation had been a surprise. Humans were barely known in this part of the galaxy, let alone respected as hunters. The hall was enormous, with floating platforms displaying various trophies. Each section belonged to a different species, and each told a story of dominance over other life forms. Sarah had been studying the displays for the past hour, trying to understand what she had gotten herself into. To her left, the Vorthak delegation had set up an impressive collection. These 8-foot-tall reptilian creatures, with razor-sharp claws, displayed the skulls of various sentient species they had hunted to extinction. Their leader, Scorthax, stood proudly beside a particularly large skull that belonged to the last of the Gentle Singers, a peaceful race that had once filled entire star systems with beautiful music. "Impressive, isn't it?" Scorthax hissed, as he noticed Sarah looking. His forked tongue flicked out as he spoke. "That one took 3 solar cycles to track down. The Gentle Singers tried to hide in the asteroid fields of their home system, but we found them all eventually." Sarah nodded politely but said nothing. The casual way he spoke about genocide made her stomach turn, but she had to maintain her composure. She was here for a reason. Further down, the Krillian Empire had displayed their collection. These insect-like creatures stood on 6 legs and had mandibles that could crush steel. Their trophy case contained preserved body parts from warriors of different worlds: hands, tentacles, wings, and other appendages from the greatest fighters they had defeated in single combat. Their champion, hive mind designation ZX9, chittered excitedly as it explained each kill to a small crowd. This appendage belonged to the War King of Belos 5, it clicked. "He fought for 6 days straight before I finally broke through his defenses. His strength was legendary, but strength means nothing without proper technique." The Shadowkin had taken a different approach. These wraith-like beings who could phase through solid matter had collected the final thoughts of their victims, stored in crystalline formations that glowed with an eerie light. Their display case was filled with thousands of these crystals, each one containing the last moments of terror from someone who had been hunted through the darkness. Sarah continued her walk, passing the bone collectors, the void hunters, and the star devourers. Each species had their own way of marking their kills, their own method of proving their superiority over other life forms. Some collected physical trophies, others kept digital records, and a few had even more disturbing ways of commemorating their hunts. The atmosphere in the hall was thick with competitive tension. These weren't just displays, they were challenges. Each species was trying to prove they were the ultimate predator, the one that deserved respect and fear from all others. As Sarah approached the far end of the hall, she noticed that a space had been reserved for her. A small platform with a simple podium sat empty, waiting for her to make her presentation. Around it, hundreds of alien predators had gathered, curious about what the human might bring to show. Sarah had received the invitation 3 months ago. It had arrived through diplomatic channels, written in perfect English, though she suspected it had been translated by some advanced AI. The message was simple. The Apex Convention recognizes your species' potential as hunters. Come and show us what makes humanity worthy of respect among the galaxy's greatest predators. At first, she thought it was a joke. Humanity was still relatively new to interstellar travel. They had only made contact with a few alien civilizations, and most of those interactions had been peaceful trade negotiations. The idea that humans were seen as predators by anyone seemed absurd. But further investigation revealed that stories about human behavior had been spreading through certain channels. Tales of human soldiers who never gave up, of explorers who survived in impossible conditions, of hunters who tracked prey across entire continents. Somehow, these stories had reached the ears of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. And they had decided humans might be interesting enough to invite to their exclusive gathering. Sarah had volunteered to attend. As a former Special Forces operative and current xenobiologist, she was one of the few humans who might be able to understand what she was walking into. The military had briefed her extensively, though they admitted they didn't really know what to expect. "Just observe," her commanding officer had said. "Learn what you can about these species, their capabilities, their weaknesses, and try not to start any interstellar incidents." Now, standing in the hall surrounded by the galaxy's most feared hunters, Sarah was beginning to understand the scope of what humanity was up against. These weren't just aggressive species. They were apex predators who had evolved to hunt and kill other sentient beings. Some of them had wiped out entire civilizations just for sport. A loud chime echoed through the hall, and the general murmur of conversation died down. From a raised platform at the center of the room, a voice spoke in the universal trade language that most species could understand. "Welcome, hunters, to the 847th Apex Convention. Today we gather to honor the greatest predators our galaxy has ever known. We will share our victories, display our trophies, and determine who among us deserves the title of Ultimate Predator." The speaker was a massive creature that Sarah didn't recognize. It looked like a cross between a spider and a shark, with multiple sets of razor-sharp teeth and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. Its voice carried easily through the hall, commanding immediate attention from everyone present. "This cycle, we have a new participant. The humans have sent a representative to show us what they have accomplished. We are curious to see if these young hunters can impress the assembled masters." All eyes turned to Sarah. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical force, pressing down on her shoulders. Some of the aliens looked amused, as if they were about to watch an entertaining show. Others seemed skeptical, wondering if humanity deserved to be here at all. Sarah took a deep breath and walked toward her designated platform. As she moved, she could hear whispered conversations in languages she didn't understand. She caught a few words here and there. Most of them seemed to be questioning whether humans had actually killed anything worth displaying. When she reached the platform, Sarah turned to face the assembled crowd. The hall had grown completely silent. Hundreds of the galaxy's most dangerous predators were waiting to see what humanity had to offer. Sarah reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a single piece of paper. It was slightly crumpled from the journey, with handwritten text in blue ink. She unfolded it carefully and held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's audio system, "is my trophy." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the respectful quiet of an audience waiting for a presentation. It was the confused silence of beings who had no idea what they were looking at. Scorthax was the first to speak up, his hissing voice filled with incredulous anger. "That is a piece of paper. Where are your skulls? Where are your preserved remains? Where is the proof of your kills?" Sarah looked down at the paper in her hands, then back up at the crowd. "This is the proof," she said calmly. "This is my grocery list." From last Tuesday, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Dozens of alien voices erupted in confusion, anger, and what might have been laughter. Some of the predators seemed insulted that their time was being wasted, while others appeared genuinely puzzled about what was happening. Silence. The massive spider-shark creature's voice boomed over the chaos. "Let the human explain herself. Perhaps there is more to this than we understand." Sarah nodded gratefully toward the moderator. "Thank you. I know this seems strange, but I'd like to explain what this grocery list represents. It might help you understand what makes humanity different from other species you've encountered." She held up the paper again, pointing to the various items written in neat handwriting. Milk, bread, eggs, chicken, rice, vegetables, fruit, simple things that any human family might need for a week. The hall remained quiet, but Sarah could see the confusion on dozens of alien faces. They had no idea where this was going. "The thing about humans," Sarah continued, "is that we don't hunt for sport. We don't collect trophies to prove how dangerous we are. We hunt because we need to eat. We kill because we need to survive. And we're very, very good at both." She walked to the edge of the platform, closer to the crowd. "You see, Every item on this list represents something that died so my family could live. The chicken was once a living bird. The milk came from a cow that we keep in captivity. The vegetables were plants that we killed to harvest. Even the bread contains yeast that we cultivated and destroyed in the baking process. Some of the aliens were starting to look interested now, though still confused about the point she was making. But here's the really interesting part, Sarah said, warming to her subject. This grocery list represents just 1 week of food for one human family. There are almost 8 billion humans on Earth. That means we kill approximately. She paused, doing quick mental math. Roughly 2 trillion living things every single week. Just to eat. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the predators were starting to look at the paper with more interest. And that's just food, Sarah continued. That doesn't count all the bacteria we kill with antibiotics, or the insects we eliminate with pesticides, or the larger animals we hunt for sport or population control. It doesn't count the forests we clear for farmland, or the ecosystems we destroy to build our cities. She folded the paper carefully and put it back in her pocket. You hunt individuals. You track down specific prey and kill them one at a time. Humans have industrialized death. We've turned killing into a process so efficient that we barely think about it anymore. The hall was completely silent now. Every predator in the room was staring at Sarah with a new kind of attention. On my planet, she said, we have facilities where we kill 10,000 chickens every hour. We have ships that can empty entire sections of ocean in a single day. We've driven thousands of species to extinction, not because we hunted them individually, but because we changed their environment so completely that they couldn't survive. Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of various alien predators. You collect skulls and body parts to prove your strength. You keep trophies to show how dangerous you are. But humans, we keep grocery lists. Because for us, killing isn't about proving anything. It's just what we do to survive. And we've gotten so good at it that we've forgotten it's supposed to be difficult. The silence stretched on for what felt like minutes. Finally, Skorthak spoke up, his voice much quieter than before. How many species have your people driven to extinction? Sarah shrugged. We've documented about 1,000. But scientists think the real number might be 10 times higher. Most species die out before we even know they existed. The Krillian champion ZX9 chittered nervously. And this, industrialized death. How long has your species been doing this? About 10,000 years, Sarah replied. Though we've gotten much more efficient in the last few centuries, these days, the average human is responsible for the deaths of thousands of animals every year, and most of them never think about it. She paused, letting that sink in. You see, the real difference between humans and other predators isn't that we're stronger or faster or more vicious. It's that we've made killing so routine, so systematic, that it's become invisible. We don't hunt. We farm. We don't track prey. We breed it. We don't fight for our food. We manufacture it. Sarah smiled, though there was something cold in her expression. So when you ask me for trophies, for proof of my kills, all I can show you is a grocery list, because that piece of paper represents more death than all of your collections combined. And tomorrow, I'll make another list just like it. The implications of her words were starting to sink in throughout the hall. These were beings who prided themselves on being the ultimate predators, the most feared hunters in the galaxy. And they were realizing that they had just met a species that had turned predation into an industry. The silence in the hall was broken by a slow clicking sound. It came from hive mind ZX9, whose mandibles were chattering in what Sarah realized was probably the Krillian equivalent of nervous laughter. The sound was picked up by other members of its delegation, creating a strange rhythmic chorus that echoed through the vast space. You jest, ZX9 finally managed to say. No species could be so efficient at killing without being completely consumed by bloodlust. You appear calm, rational. This must be some form of human humor we do not understand. This Newmark, Sarah shook her head slowly. I'm afraid not. Would you like me to explain how we process livestock? Or perhaps how our fishing fleets operate? I could describe our agricultural methods, if you're interested in how we kill plants. The spider shark moderator leaned forward on its platform, all of its eyes focused intently on Sarah. Explain the livestock, it said in a voice that carried clearly through the hall. We wish to understand this industrial death. Sarah nodded and walked to the center of her platform. Let's start with something simple. Chickens. She paused, organizing her thoughts. On Earth, we raise approximately 25 billion chickens every year. They're born in incubators, raised in controlled environments, and killed when they reach the optimal weight. She gestured with her hands as she spoke, trying to help the aliens visualize what she was describing. The entire process takes about 6 weeks, from egg to market. The chickens are kept in buildings that can hold tens of thousands of birds. They're fed a specially designed diet that makes them grow as quickly as possible. Scorthax interrupted, his reptilian eyes narrowing. You speak of domesticated prey. This is not hunting. This is farming. Any civilized species can raise livestock. True, Sarah agreed. But the scale is what makes it remarkable. A single processing facility can kill and prepare 40,000 chickens in 1 hour. The entire process is automated. Machines do most of the work, while humans simply monitor the systems. She pulled out her phone and showed a picture she had prepared for this presentation. This is what a modern chicken processing plant looks like from above. Each of those buildings contains between 30 and 40,000 birds. This particular facility processes about 8 million chickens per year. The image passed through the crowd as aliens used their various visual enhancement technologies to examine it. Sarah could hear whispered conversations in dozens of languages. But the tone was different now. The dismissive arrogance was being replaced by something that might have been concern. A new voice spoke up from near the back of the hall. It belonged to one of the Shadowkin, its wispy form barely visible in the dim lighting. The efficiency is impressive. But surely this level of killing affects your species psychologically? We have observed that excessive hunting can drive predators to madness. Sarah considered the question carefully. That's actually a very insightful observation. We've had to develop psychological mechanisms to deal with the constant killing. Most humans practice what we call cognitive dissociation. We mentally separate the living animal from the food product. She pointed to her grocery list. When I wrote chicken on this list, I wasn't thinking about a living bird. I was thinking about packaged meat in a refrigerated display case. The transformation from living creature to food product happens in facilities that most humans never see, performed by workers that most humans never meet. The explanation seemed to disturb some of the aliens more than the raw numbers had. The Vorthak delegation was engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion among themselves. Sarah caught fragments of their hissing conversation. They seemed to be debating whether humans were brilliant or insane. This dissociation, the spider shark moderator asked, is it taught to your young? From birth, Sarah confirmed. A human child will play with toy animals, read stories about talking animals, and even keep pets, all while eating meat products every day. By the time they're adults, the connection between living animals and food has been completely severed in their minds. She paused, then added, of course, some humans choose to reconnect with that process. We call them vegetarians or vegans. But they're a small minority, maybe 5% of the global population. A commotion arose from the section where the bone collectors had set up their display. These tall, skeletal beings were known for their meticulous record-keeping and their obsession with cataloging their kills. Their leader, a creature called the Archivant, was consulting what appeared to be a massive data crystal. According to our records, the Archivant announced in a voice like grinding stone, the most prolific individual predator in galactic history killed 47,329 sentient beings over a lifespan of 800 standard years. Are you claiming that humans exceed this number? Sarah did some quick mental math. The average human consumes about 2,400 animals per year, not counting fish, which would multiply that number significantly. So yes, a typical human with a normal lifespan will be responsible for the deaths of about 150,000 to 200,000 animals. And that's just direct consumption. The number hit the assembled predators like a physical blow. Conversations erupted throughout the hall as various species tried to process what they had just heard. "Impossible," hissed Scorthax. "No single organism could kill that many others without developing some form of—" "But that's just it," Sarah interrupted. "We don't develop anything. We don't change. To us, those deaths are invisible. They happen in places we never see. Performed by people we never meet. Using methods we never think about." She pulled up another image on her phone, this one showing a vast cattle ranch from aerial view. This facility raises about 100,000 cattle at any given time. The animals are born here, live here, and die here. Most humans who eat beef from this operation will never know this place exists. The implications were starting to sink in throughout the hall. These aliens had built entire cultures around the significance of individual kills. They kept trophies, told stories, held ceremonies. Every death was meaningful, recorded, remembered. Humans had made death meaningless. ZX9 spoke up again, its chittering more subdued than before. "This industrial killing, it is only for food?" Sarah shook her head. "Oh no. That's just the beginning. We also kill for protection. Billions of insects every year with pesticides. We kill for convenience. Any bacteria or virus that threatens human health. We kill for expansion. Any ecosystem that stands in the way of human development." She paused, then continued. "But the most disturbing part, from your perspective, might be that we also kill for entertainment. We have entire industries built around fictional killing, movies, video games, books, all focused on death and violence. We've made killing into art." The Shadowkin delegate drifted closer to Sarah's platform. "You say your people kill for entertainment. Yet you appear to have no trophies. No records of these kills. How do you commemorate your victories?" "We don't," Sarah said simply. "That's the point. For humans, killing isn't victory. It's just Tuesday. We don't commemorate it because it's not special. It's like asking us to commemorate breathing, or walking, or sleeping." The spider shark moderator had been silent for several minutes, apparently processing everything it had heard. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a weight that commanded immediate attention from the entire hall. "Human Sarah Chen," it said formally, "your species' approach to predation is unprecedented in our experience. We have encountered many different types of hunters, but none who have so completely systematized the process of killing. We find ourselves curious about the practical implications." It paused, seeming to choose its words carefully. "In your estimation, how would humanity perform if challenged by other predator species?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "That depends on the type of challenge. If you're talking about individual combat, we're probably not impressive compared to most of the species represented here. We're not particularly strong, fast, or well-armed by natural standards." She gestured toward the various alien delegations. "But if you're talking about species-level competition, humans have some advantages that might surprise you." "Elaborate," commanded the moderator. "First, our industrial approach to killing extends to warfare as well. When humans fight wars, we don't just kill enemy soldiers, we target entire infrastructure systems. We destroy supply lines, communication networks, transportation hubs. We make it impossible for enemy populations to sustain themselves." Sarah's voice took on a lecturing tone, as if she were explaining a scientific principle. "Second, we have a remarkable ability to adapt our tactics based on what we're fighting. We've developed different approaches for every type of threat we've encountered: biological, chemical, technological, environmental." She counted off on her fingers. "Third, we're extremely persistent. Most predator species give up if prey escapes or becomes too difficult to catch. Humans will track prey across continents and decades if necessary. We've hunted species to extinction simply because we decided they were inconvenient." The hall had grown very quiet as Sarah spoke. The assembled predators were starting to understand that they weren't just meeting a new hunting species. They were meeting something unprecedented in galactic history. And finally, Sarah continued. Humans have weaponized cooperation in ways that most predator species cannot comprehend. When we decide something needs to die, we don't send individual hunters. We coordinate the efforts of millions, or even billions of individuals. She pulled up one final image on her phone. A satellite view of Earth at night, showing the lights of human cities covering entire continents. This is what 8 billion cooperating predators can accomplish. Every light you see represents a community of humans working together to reshape their environment. The image was passed around the hall, and Sarah could see the growing unease among the alien delegations. The scale of human civilization was becoming clear to them, and it was vastly larger than anything they had encountered before. Scorthax was the first to voice what many of them were probably thinking. Your species. How many worlds do you currently inhabit? Just one. So far, Sarah replied. Earth. But we're working on expanding to others. We have preliminary settlements on our moon and Mars, and we're developing the technology for interstellar travel. One world, repeated the Archivant in its grinding voice. 8 billion individuals on a single planet. The ecological pressure must be enormous. It is, Sarah agreed. We've had to develop incredible efficiency in resource management just to survive. That's part of what drove us to industrialize death. We needed to produce enough food for our population, without using too much land or energy. She folded her hands behind her back and looked out over the assembled predators. You see, every species here has evolved to be apex predators within their particular ecological niche. You've perfected the art of hunting specific types of prey in specific environments. Sarah smiled, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. But humans have evolved to be apex predators of entire ecosystems. We don't just hunt individual species. We reshape entire worlds to suit our needs. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every predator in the hall was beginning to understand that they weren't just meeting a new species of hunter. They were meeting a species that could potentially outcompete them all. Not through superior individual prowess, but through sheer systematic efficiency. The spider shark moderator's multiple eyes were all focused on Sarah now, and its voice carried an undertone that hadn't been there before. Human Sarah Chen, it said slowly. We believe we understand your message. But we have one final question. Well, Sarah nodded expectantly. If your species is as efficient at killing as you claim, what prevents you from simply eliminating all other life in the galaxy? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from every alien in the hall. The assembled predators, beings who had built their entire identities around being the most dangerous creatures in their respective sectors of space, were suddenly confronting the possibility that they had encountered something far more lethal than themselves. Sarah took a deep breath and looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of various alien species. Some looked afraid, others angry, and a few seemed genuinely curious about her answer. She realized that her next words would determine not just how these beings viewed humanity, but potentially the future relationship between humans and the rest of the galaxy. That, she said slowly, is probably the most important question anyone has asked today. She walked to the edge of her platform, bringing herself as close to the assembled aliens as possible. The answer isn't what you might expect. It's not because we lack the capability. If humans decided to eliminate all other life in the galaxy, we would eventually find a way to do it. It's not because we're too weak or too few in number. Sarah paused, organizing her thoughts. The reason humans don't eliminate everything else is because we've learned something that most predator species never figure out. Sustainable predation requires biodiversity. She gestured toward the various trophy displays around the hall. Every species here has made the same basic mistake. You've defined success as the complete domination or elimination of your prey. You hunt until there's nothing left to hunt, and then you move on to new prey. The bone collector Archivant made a grinding sound that might have been disagreement. Efficiency in hunting is the mark of superior evolution. Why would any predator choose to leave prey alive? Sarah smiled. Because living prey reproduces. Dead prey doesn't. She pulled out her phone again and showed an image of vast agricultural fields stretching to the horizon. This is why humans became farmers instead of just hunters. We realized that if we managed our prey properly, if we controlled their breeding, their feeding, their environment, we could have a sustainable supply of food forever. End quote. The concept seemed to be genuinely alien to most of the assembled predators. Sarah could see confusion on dozens of faces as they tried to process the idea of deliberately not killing everything available. Let me give you a specific example, Sarah continued. On Earth, we have a species called salmon. They're fish that live in the ocean but return to rivers to reproduce. For thousands of years, humans harvested salmon, but we learned to do it sustainably. She swiped to another image showing fish swimming upstream. We take some of the adult salmon for food, but we always let enough through to reproduce and maintain the population. Some years we take more, some years we take fewer, depending on how many fish are available. The result is that we've had a steady supply of salmon for millennia. Scorthax hissed in apparent frustration. But surely it would be more efficient to simply take all the salmon at once? Why leave any to escape? Because then there would be no salmon next year, Sarah explained patiently. Or the year after that. By taking only what we need and managing the population carefully, we ensure that there will always be salmon for future generations of humans. The spider shark moderator leaned forward, its multiple eyes reflecting the hall's lights. This concept of sustainable killing, it applies to all your prey? Most of it, Sarah confirmed. We've learned to manage forests so we can harvest wood indefinitely. We've learned to manage fisheries so fish populations remain stable. We've even learned to manage the bacteria in our own bodies, killing only the harmful ones, while preserving the beneficial ones. She paused, then added, of course, we haven't always been good at this. Humans have driven many species to extinction through overhunting or habitat destruction, but we've learned from those mistakes. Modern human civilization is built around the principle of sustainable resource management. A new voice spoke up from the crowd. It belonged to one of the void hunters, a species that was known for consuming entire star systems. This sustainability, it is motivated by compassion for your prey? Sarah laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise many of the aliens. Oh no, not at all. It's purely practical. We practice sustainable predation because it's more efficient in the long term. Compassion has very little to do with it. She gestured toward the various alien delegations. Every species here has made the same error in thinking. You've optimized for short-term hunting success rather than long-term resource security. You kill everything you can, celebrate your victories, and then move on to find new prey. Sarah's voice took on a lecturing tone again. Humans optimize for system stability. We want to ensure that there will always be something to kill, something to eat, something to exploit. We've turned the entire planet into a managed ecosystem designed to support human life indefinitely. The implications were staggering. The assembled predators were realizing that humans hadn't just industrialized killing, they had industrialized everything else as well: food production, resource management, environmental control, population management. ZX9 chittered nervously. This managed ecosystem, it includes the management of human populations as well? Sarah nodded. Absolutely. We've developed complex social systems to prevent human overpopulation from destroying our resource base. Birth rates, economic systems, education, healthcare, everything is designed to maintain a stable human population that can be supported indefinitely. She pulled up another image. This one, showing a complex chart of global resource flows. This is a simplified version of how we manage our global ecosystem. Food production here, raw material extraction here, waste processing here, population distribution here. Every element is monitored and controlled to maintain optimal efficiency. The chart was passed around the hall, and Sarah could see the growing comprehension on alien faces. They were starting to understand that humanity wasn't just another predator species, It was a civilization-scale management system. The Shadowkin delegate drifted closer again. This system, it could theoretically be applied to other worlds? Other species? Theoretically, yes, Sarah agreed. If humans decided to expand beyond Earth, we would apply the same principles. Find the optimal sustainable yield for each resource. Establish management systems to maintain that yield indefinitely. Integrate everything into a stable ecosystem that can support human civilization. The silence that followed was profound. Every predator in the hall was thinking the same thing. If humans applied their systematic approach to an entire galaxy, what would be left for anyone else? Sarah seemed to read their thoughts. But here's the thing you need to understand about humanity, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. We're not conquerors in the traditional sense. We're not interested in dominating other species just to prove we can do it. She gestured toward the trophy displays around the hall. All of you hunt for glory, for status, for the thrill of victory. Humans hunt for survival and sustainability. If we encounter other intelligent species, our first instinct isn't to fight them. It's to figure out how to coexist with them in a way that benefits everyone. Scorthox hissed skeptically. You claim your species seeks cooperation, yet you describe industrial-scale killing unlike anything we have seen. Those aren't contradictory, Sarah explained. Humans are perfectly capable of both cooperation and destruction, often at the same time. We cooperate with what benefits us, and we eliminate what threatens us. The key is that we're very good at distinguishing between the two. She pulled out her grocery list again and held it up. This piece of paper represents death on a massive scale, but it also represents life. Every item on this list helps keep my family alive and healthy. The killing serves a purpose. It's not random. It's not for glory. It's for survival. Sarah looked around the hall again. When humans first started receiving reports about this convention, about species that hunt for sport and collect trophies, our initial reaction wasn't fear or anger, it was confusion. We couldn't understand why anyone would waste energy killing things they didn't need to kill. The spider shark moderator had been silent for several minutes, apparently processing everything it had heard. When it spoke again, its voice carried a new tone. Not exactly respectful, but no longer dismissive. Human Sarah Chen, it said formally. You have given us much to consider. Your species' approach to predation is unprecedented, but we must ask, what are your intentions regarding the species represented here? Sarah considered the question carefully. That depends entirely on your intentions regarding humanity. If you leave humans alone, we'll leave you alone. If you threaten human interests, we'll treat you like any other threat to our survival. She paused, then added, but if you're interested in cooperation, humans are remarkably good at finding mutually beneficial arrangements. We've learned that diverse ecosystems are more stable than simple ones. A galaxy with many different species is potentially more valuable than a galaxy with just humans. The statement seemed to surprise many of the aliens. They had expected threats or demands for submission. Instead, they were being offered partnership. What form would this cooperation take? Asked the Archivant. Sarah shrugged. That would depend on what each species has to offer. Humans are good at system management, resource optimization, and sustainable development. Other species might have different strengths. Technology we haven't developed. Knowledge we don't possess. Capabilities we lack. She gestured toward the assembled predators. For example, the hunting skills represented in this room could be valuable for humans in the right context. Not for sport or glory, but for ecosystem management. Sometimes prey populations need to be controlled to maintain balance. The idea seemed to intrigue some of the aliens. They were used to thinking of their hunting abilities as purely destructive, but Sarah was suggesting they could be productive as well. Of course, Sarah continued, any cooperation would have to be sustainable. Humans aren't interested in short-term alliances that end in betrayal or violence. We prefer long-term relationships that benefit everyone involved. She folded her grocery list and put it back in her pocket. The choice is yours. You can view humanity as a threat to be eliminated, in which case you'll discover just how efficient our destructive capabilities really are. You can ignore us entirely, in which case we'll ignore you back and you'll become irrelevant to galactic affairs. Sarah smiled, and there was something both warm and cold in the expression. Or you can choose to work with us and discover what 8 billion cooperating predators can accomplish when they put their minds to something productive. The hall erupted in conversation as various species discussed among themselves. Sarah could hear fragments of dozens of different languages, but the tone was no longer dismissive or aggressive. The aliens were seriously considering what she had offered. After several minutes, the spider shark moderator called for silence. The convention will recess while the assembled delegations consider what we have learned today. When we reconvene, we will discuss the implications of humanity's unique approach to predation. As the aliens began to disperse, many of them took a last look at Sarah. She stood on her platform, holding nothing but a simple grocery list, and somehow that made her more intimidating than any trophy display in the hall. The galaxy's greatest predators were beginning to understand that they had just encountered something unprecedented. A species that had turned killing into a science, cooperation into an art, and survival into a way of life. Whether that would lead to conflict or cooperation remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. Sarah tucked her grocery list back into her jacket pocket and smiled. Tomorrow, she would need to make a new list. And somehow, that simple fact carried more weight than any trophy in the hall.